So I'm going to review the lease with you right now. This is the standard form lease that we use for residential rentals in New Jersey. It's from the New Jersey Association of Realtors. And it is the basic lease that we use for rental apartments. The other form here, and I'll link both of these forms down below, is the Truth in Renting Guide. And this is to be provided to you as a tenant when you rent an apartment. And this is your rights as a tenant in New Jersey. And basically it goes over all of your rights as a tenant, contacts, information, basically the right, your rights when you live in that rental apartment. Again, window guards, which I discussed in a previous video, carbon monoxide detectors, things that you have the right to as a renter renting an apartment. So I will link this down below. This comes from the state of New Jersey Department of Consumer Affairs, and you are to receive a copy of this when you rent an apartment. And the lease, basically, it's about 10 pages, actually 8 pages. And I'll start from the top. So basically, a lease is a legally binding agreement that will become final within 3 business days. During this period, you may choose to consult an attorney who can review and/or cancel a contract. See attorney review section for details. What that means is that 3-day period does not start until the lease is signed by both the tenant and the landlord and delivered to you. Once you receive a copy back of the fully executed lease, that is when the attorney review time frame starts ticking and that 3-day period starts. At the end of the 3rd business day, you can cancel. By the end of the 3rd business day, you have the right to cancel the agreement without penalty. So there is an attorney review clause built in here. You don't need an attorney. You can have an attorney review the lease, but you could also, it's not binding until after the 3rd business day. And the lease discusses that further as far as definitions of time and attorney review and how you count time, etc. Basically, the lease will state the landlord's information, their address, your information, your current address. What is the property address that's being rented? Is it a condominium? Is it an apartment? What's the unit number if there is one? What's the address? What town is it located in? That's all here. There is a clause in the lease that states that if you're renting a condominium, your tenancy can be terminated with 60 days notice if the landlord decides to sell the property to someone who personally wants to own or occupy the unit. If it's somebody who is going to be an investor and continue to rent out the unit, they would have to then honor your lease until the end of your lease term at that same term. But if they're going to own or occupy it, the landlord has the right to sell the unit. And with 60 days notice, you could be given 60 days notice to then vacate if the property is sold and the new buyer wants to personally occupy it. And that is stated here on the form. Second page talks about the term of the lease. So when is it starting? When is it ending? How long is the lease for? What is the rent for the term? Meaning if it's $1,000 a month and it's a 12-month lease, that means the rent is $12,000 for the term, and it's paid by $1,000 per month, which is always due traditionally on the 1st of the month, unless the landlord wants it paid on a different date. And who is it made payable to? Where are you sending the rent? Many landlords now want electronic payments done. So what information is there for that payment? Is it Venmo? Is it a direct deposit, etc.? Or is it checks? Where is the check being mailed to every month, etc.? The initial deposit is, when you apply for the rental, you're probably going to be giving a security deposit. Well, what is that amount? When was it received? That goes in the lease as well. This area section talks all about security deposit. What is the amount? When is it to be returned to you after you move out, etc. Late penalty. The rent is usually due on the 1st of the month, and you usually have until the 5th day to pay the rent without penalty. After the 5th day, traditionally, there is a late charge. Well, how much is that late charge? Also, is there a processing charge if the check was bounced, etc.? So I see these fees vary. Landlords have different fees. I've seen it at $100. I've seen it as a percentage of the rent. I've seen it as a amount per day that's late. So it could be $100 per day until paid, etc. What's included in the rent, utility-wise? What are you responsible for? What is the landlord responsible for? That is all outlined here. A lot of this is not fillable, so these are like preset conditions on the lease. No assignment or subletting, eviction information, damages, what's the definition of damages, what is your responsibility, what are you responsible to maintain, what is the landlord responsible to maintain, how much notice does the landlord have to give you to access the property. That's all spoken about in this lease. No alterations or installation of equipment. What are you allowed to change? What are you not allowed to change? Inspections. Is the town going to come in to inspect? Are you to provide no access to them? Insurance. Usually you are responsible for obtaining your own renter's insurance policy. The landlord will provide you with how much coverage you need. And then you'll have to get a renter's insurance policy to cover the unit and also your personal items. The pets. Is there a pet? Do you have a pet? Is the landlord accepting a pet? Are no pets permitted, etc. So if there is a pet, that has to be agreed upon and put in the lease. Renewal of the lease. How much time before the end of the lease are you to be notified of the rent increase? Then how much time do you have to respond to the landlord's notice of renewal? So for example, if your lease is ending on December 31st, for example, and you are to be given 60 days notice prior to the end of the lease of the new terms of that lease, you will then have a period of time to respond to the landlord. It's usually 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, to say, yes, I agree to your lease renewal terms, or no, I do not agree and I'm leaving. I'm going to be moving out. And then this is a broader explanation of the attorney review clause. If there's commission to be paid, if there's brokers involved, who are the brokers, how much is the fee for each broker? That's all put down here, along with the contact information for the brokers. Window guard information, if there's a child under the age of 10, that has to be stated here. If the landlord, you have the right to request window guards if that's the case. Declaration of relationships. Who are the brokers involved and how do they represent? Which company represents a landlord? Which company represents a tenant? Are they representing as a tenant's agent, a dual agent? That's all outlined here. And then any other additional terms and conditions would be outlined here as well. If the landlord has any specific language that they want to add to the lease, and then you would sign it and the landlord would sign it and initial the bottom of each page. I'll link this down below. I know I went over a lot of information, but it is always good to review the lease prior to starting renting. That way, starting the process, that way you can become familiar with the language in the lease that is used. Some landlords have their own leases, which is like probably going to be similar to this with some additions that their lawyers added. But this basic lease, standard form lease, is the framework that we use in this area. And you'll also receive a copy of this form. And then in the next video, I'll discuss the lead paint disclosure forms. Any questions, please let me know. I can be reached at walter@livingonthehudson.com or at 347-448-3766. Thank you.